Hello and welcome to PFF Now. I'm joined by Andrew Callahan of the Boston Herald. Andrew, how are you doing today?
It's late in the week in the combine, so I'm tired, Doug, but it's really good to be here.
Well, let's talk about the New England Patriots coaching situation because you covered the Patriots for the Boston Herald. Things are a little bit wacky there in New England right now. No offensive coordinator, no defensive coordinator. It seems like they're adding a special teams coach, Joe Judge, to the offensive staff. Matt Patricia, historically a defensive coach, probably working with the offensive staff. What's going on there in New England?
Yeah, what the heck is the response I've gotten from everyone I talked to this week. And there's not a whole lot of feedback, honestly, beyond that. But I think there's more confidence in Joe Judge, who also coached wide receivers in his last season in New England in 2019, to step in and take over a new position. Because Bill Belichick is on the record saying, I think he can coach anywhere. The question is more honestly about Patricia, who you have to go all the way back to, I think, 2003 or 4 when he helped out with the offensive line, because he's expected to be on offense. And we haven't seen him succeed much, obviously, at all outside New England, or even his last few defenses with the Patriots. So for him to coach a new position, a new side of the ball is going to be different. But I think they obviously feel more confident about it than anyone else in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, it's worth noting, of course, that Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, both previous head coaches.
Yeah.
So they were coaching everything, but obviously they kind of had their specialty there as well. But, well, I mean, this is something that people on the outside might not really realize, but if you go through the Patriots' entire coaching staff, the only person who has actually called offensive plays is the head coach, Bill Belichick. He did it for a couple of years in Cleveland when he didn't have an offensive coordinator. So, I mean, I've personally heard that's a possibility that Bill Belichick could actually step up a little bit on offense, judging by how those Browns teams played in the 90s. Maybe not the best thing, but
the game's a little different.
Yeah, ultimately, I mean, I think that as a level of confidence thing, like maybe you probably do have more confidence in Bill Belichick taking over the offense than guys like Joe Judge and Matt Patricia.
Yeah, and I've heard the same thing. And the reaction, even from people who recently left the team, is like, are you serious? And I'm like, yes, actually.
Yeah.
But the only other candidate to call plays in my mind, would be Nick Caley, who's been there now 5 seasons as a tight ends coach, 7 overall, and tight end being a position that's obviously tied pass protection, run blocking, and running routes. So he's got a very good feel for the system. But, it's unclear to me why Caley stayed. Either McDaniels couldn't pull him away to Vegas, or Belichick said, we want him here.
Right, yeah.
So it's just a matter of that ceiling. But yeah, I could see Belichick or Caley in the mix there, probably over Judge or Patricia. The other part is, obviously, he's got confidence in Steve Belichick and Rod Mayo handling the defense. So he can devote his attention to the offense and let those guys, handle the work that they've really been doing the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, one thing that was interesting that came out of this week is that Josh McDaniels talked at the podiums, and he was asked, I don't remember if it was by you or someone else, basically just that, did you have a conversation with Bill Belichick before you took 3 members of the offensive staff? And that was Mick Lombardi, the wide receivers coach, Bo Hardigree, who was basically the assistant quarterbacks coach, and Carmen Bracilla, the offensive line coach. And he said, yeah, we did have those conversations. So it seemed like Bill Belichick was at least willing to lose those guys. Maybe, like you said, let's hold back Nick Caley since he's got the most experience there on the rest of the staff. But no, I mean, it's an interesting thing because if you talk to people around the league, like, people aren't used to having de facto offensive coordinators, de facto defensive coordinators. I covered the Patriots for 8 years. You've covered the Patriots for a number of years. That's like just a normal thing to us at this point. But this would be the first time since 2010 that they don't have an offensive or defensive coordinator. And with Mac Jones at quarterback, it just doesn't seem like it's the best year to be doing this, really.
Yeah, and I think in a way, though, it also reflects the confidence they have in Mac, which McDaniels also spoke to as like the most mature kid I've ever coached as a rookie. Now, again, that's within a rookie framework, but you look at him and go, his mechanics were pretty clean coming into the NFL. He now understands the system, but obviously you want someone experienced, someone that you would look to, have quarterback coaching experience, and they just don't have that. So it'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out. And I think part of the assistants that went with McDaniels, I think Mick Lombardi's contract expired, so that was an easy transition. But yeah, to lose Carmen Bracilla, who took over last year as the lead offensive line coach, and the year before we're splitting those duties, and now you need someone to replace him. It's tough because those guys obviously are protecting Mac Jones, and that's equally as important, honestly, as someone who's handling him as a direct quarterback's coach.
Definitely. One thing, like with Mac Jones on that topic, that I think back to is, first of all, the NFL Films video of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick sitting down together in Bill's office.
Every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday. And I think obviously that's going to have to continue with Mac Jones and Bill Belichick. And since they were able to do those things, I have a lot of confidence in Bill to be able to handle Mac and, bring him along that way. The other thing, though, is just what I think Dean Pease said it on a podcast at one point. And he said that when he was there, Bill really wasn't in defensive meetings that much. He was really working heavily with Tom Brady at the time. So it's not as if, Bill Belichick was just this defensive coach. I think he probably was for a number of years recently since he had so much confidence in Josh McDaniels. But there is at least that history with Bill. And I mean, it would just add to his legacy, basically.
Oh my God.
If the Patriots do have a really solid offense this year with Belichick as their de facto OC.
And I'd be curious, if he's running the system like that, does he introduce some new wrinkles? I think there's some cutting edge stuff in a lot of the RPO elements, which Bill O'Brien made sense on a lot of different levels, but I think would have brought some of that Mac ran in college and made them more successful and kind of unlocked a run game, even when teams were kind of stacking the box. But stepping back for a second, I think, I talked to a former Pro Bowl quarterback who, worked or played under an offensive head coach and said, look, our quarterback's coach was really kind of a secretary. Like, he put together the playbook in terms of writing it on the board, but the head coach did the direct coaching that I had.
Right.
And he was like, I can see Belichick doing that, who's everyone talked about, someone who could step into any position and coach them just because he's been around the game so long, obviously started in special teams and worked his way up. So he's always been on the defense, but I think you're right. Whether it's Dean Pease saying that, us being around the team, or you're talking to people who have been in similar organizations and setups, this could work.
Yeah, and there has been some buzz, I'd say, that they might introduce some elements of the Alabama offense in the Patriots system. I think that would be a lot of fun for Mac Jones and the Patriots. But Andrew, thank you very much for joining us. How can people follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, it's @_ Andrew Callahan. I need to find the @Andrew Callahan guy and pay him off or fix that, but it's very simple.
All right, and they can read your work at the Boston Herald as well. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Doug.